You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we'll get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Well, today, meet Fabian Serralta, who founded a very popular gravel event called Gravel Locos. And this was after he discovered his love of gravel biking. He wanted to share with others his experience riding rural gravel roads while raising money for the local volunteer fire station in Hico, Texas. Gravel Locos has attracted over 1,600 gravel enthusiasts each year, from newbies all the way up to the pros. And he successfully put the small town of Hico on the map. This event takes place in May, and Gravel Locos has expanded to a second event that happens in the fall and takes place in Pueblo, Colorado. Find more information at gravellocos.bike. And here is Fabian to tell us more. Well, I'd like to welcome Fabian to the podcast. Hey, Fabian.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
Good. So Fabian, as I said in the intro, is part of a pretty cool series of events, I'll say, Gravel Locos, right?
Yes.
I cannot wait to talk about it. I feel like I've been talking about gravel for quite a while on this podcast, and the more I do it, the more I enjoy it as, a mode of transportation.
Yeah, it's I remember when I first started riding gravel and telling folks about it. They're like, "Are you crazy? Why would you pick when there's perfectly smooth paved roads?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, I started, I would assume as a kid, because I live in Iowa, where we probably have more gravel roads than paved roads. And I'm assuming as a youngster, I was on probably my 10 speed and sailing over gravel like it was no big deal. And, now as an adult, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm choosing to do this?
See, you were riding gravel before you even knew it was going to become a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And not complaining on a 10-speed with small tires.
I know. And I don't ever remember having to change a tire, but I'm sure I did. It's a memory that maybe is, suppressed or something. But anyway, before we get into Gravel Locos, do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about you, like where you grew up and then where you live now?
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Cuba, and I was there for the first, 8-9 years of my life. And my mom and dad and two brothers and a sister. We were fortunate enough to be able to move to Miami in 1980. And so from Cuba to Miami, and I spent 30-something years in Miami, and then from Miami to Texas. And that's where I currently am right now, in Texas.
Nice. Okay. I rode my bike across the United States last year and spent, I don't remember how many days, like 26 days pedaling across Texas. So
Oh, wow.
I spent some quality time there.
That's a long time in Texas.
Yeah. And, growing up in Miami, did you bike as a kid in that area?
Yeah. So, when we came from Cuba, we lived in a little one-bedroom apartment. It was like 7 of us because I had a grandmother. And there was a bike shop not far. And I started kind of going over there. And back then, my dad got me a used Huffy
Oh,
bike,
yeah.
like a BMX bike. So I started going by this little bike shop called Cycle World. It's actually still in Miami, and the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Lee, really nice folks. They had migrated also to the U.S., but from China, and they were really just warm, fuzzy, nice, welcoming type of folks, and did so much for the kids in the neighborhood. And I was one of them. They just helped me with bike tires and setting up my bike, and gave me a racing jersey, pants, and helmet, and kind of took me under their wing. And I started racing BMX with their bike shop team, and we would, race in Pompano, Florida, and Homestead, Florida, and other tracks. So that was my introduction to bikes in the U.S. I remember in Cuba when I first learned how to ride a bike, my it was a Schwinn, and I remember my dad teaching me, and when he took the training wheels off, and he said, "All right, you can go from this end of the street to the other end, on the sidewalk." So I started doing that. It was just like so liberating not having training wheels, and I was
Yeah.
riding from one end to the other, one end to the other. And I was like, all right, this is getting old. So then I started going all the way around the block, and I did that. And then I added a few more blocks, and before I knew it, it was nighttime. And when I got back home, I got an ass kicking. Like, where the hell have you been? Like, man, you set me loose. You took those wheels off, and I
Yeah,
just went exploring.
the freedom,
So,
man.
yeah, it was the greatest feeling ever, and I'll never forget that. Just like being out there riding as a kid in Cuba, and just like, wow, I've never seen this street, and I've never seen this side, and so yeah, that feeling. And then in Miami with the BMX bikes, kind of reminds me of what you were saying about being in Iowa and the 10 speed and the gravel. We would get on these BMX bikes that are, one brake, one gear, and we ride like 14 hours,
Oh,
get up
geez,
really
yeah.
early, and we ride from one end of Miami to the other, and then we never complain about those plastic hard seats or anything. And so, and then, from the BMX, I got a little bit into motocross and then some mountain biking. And then sometime, I think around 1998 or so, I met a guy out where I was training my dog, and he rode road, and he's like, "Oh man, you got to come ride road with me. There's this group ride." And I showed up with my mountain bike, but I had them put some slick tires at the bike shop, and that's how I started riding road in Miami, on a mountain bike with slicks,
Mm.
with this uh, group of guys riding Pinarello bicycles and Colnagos and all this fancy stuff. And
And
then from there, I moved to Texas in 2005 and got my first road bike. It was a Specialized, and did that for several years until 2015. I was visiting my son at the university in Denver, Colorado, and I went into I think it was a Specialized bike shop, and I saw this really cool looking, road bike, but with like knobby tires, and I was like, man, what is that?
right, yeah.
Yeah, and it turned out to be it was a cyclocross bike, and which I had no idea what cyclocross was. And I started telling the guys at the shop, man, this bike is like ideal because I bought this ranch in Oklahoma, and I've been there. And, I've had it for 3 years, but I can't take my road bikes because, the driveway is like 3 miles of gravel, and then the closest paved road is another 7 or 8 miles of gravel.
Mm.
And so I purchased that bike. They shipped it to Texas, and I had the bike shop build it for me, and that was my first. I guess the closest thing to a gravel bike was that Crux.
Yeah.
And then I guess my first gravel event that I attended was October 1st, 2016 in Texas. And I showed up with that bike with 700 by 33C tires, and they were just at 90 psi or 95 psi. And it was a beating, the hardest 50 miles of my life. Thought I
I
was going to die.
Yeah, I can. My first gravel experience is very similar. Like the first event that I entered. So yeah, way too much air pressure. The rocks were shooting out from the sides, probably hitting other
Hmm.
bikers.
Yep. And I didn't even, I mean, I brought two bottles and a couple of snacks. So I thought it was going to be kind of like a road rally. And I've been attending, many of these road rallies where you pay, whatever fee, and there are aid stations and drinks and food and pickles and such. And I forgot to read the little fine print that said self-supported. So I never thought that 50 miles was going to take so long, and not having any aid stations or anything. It was hard.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever that experience was, you were hooked, right?
Not that day. That day, I swear I'd never do that again. I
Oh,
remember calling my friend Juan, and I was like, Juan, I'm gonna kill you, dude. Why? Where were you? Oh, I mean, I overslept. I'm like, you're the one that talked me into doing this because he rode gravel, And he's like, well, you've ridden 100 miles before and this and that. I go, I know, but this was very different. And then when I told him the tire pressure, and he's like, oh, no, dude, you can't run those tires and that tire pressure. And it's no wonder you got beat up. But I was so mad at him for not showing up. And I guess a day later or that same day, I don't know, I went back to my Oklahoma ranch at the time, and I was just sitting there and like, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to do this again. And I remember lowering the tire pressure and then trying to bike at the range. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and
But I guess it was definitely that experience that got me to start signing up for like every gravel event I could find, including BWR San Diego and every event I could find in Texas. Eventually, I got to do Mid South. That was an incredible experience.
oh wow, yeah.
And did Ted and Laura King's Route of Vermont and Jess, Sarah, and Sam Boardman. So I did the last best ride in Whitefish, Montana, and a few other places. So, yeah, I would say that was the event that kind of got me hooked on gravel.
The ones you just mentioned are, not to mention epic gravel, but just beautiful places to be.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, I remember doing Ted's event, and my kids are really into it, like Harry Potter, and I've kind of gotten a few glimpses of some of the movies that they watch, and I remember telling them, man, it looked like I was in Harry Potter's jungle in there. It was so beautiful in Vermont. These particular sections of the course, which is unbelievable, gorgeous forest. Same thing with Whitefish, Montana.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe, um, like the hype or the spirit of gravel? Because it's so much different than road riding, and for sure different than like BMX, like you described earlier.
Actually, I think it's probably closer to BMX than it is to road. Uh, it's more of a, I don't know. I think of it as a sort of like, in baseball team terms, the sand lot. It's people just come with what they have and they come as they are. And it's an environment that, you're not really being judged for the bike or the wheels or the kit that you're wearing or
Mm-hmm.
whether you're match or not. So I've always felt that it kind of reminded me a little bit of being a kid and riding BMX bikes, just that whole grassroots feel. And and I get asked this question a lot sometimes, and I always say that, for me, uh, the spirit of gravel is, as a promoter, is making sure that I provide a space or an event race that has enough distances that pretty much everyone can participate.
Oh yeah.
So for me, it's important to have a 30-mile route, a 60-mile, 100-mile, and then our big route, the 155. And I feel that that's one way that I can make sure that, folks that are beginners or folks that are interested in gravel can come in and commit to maybe a 30-mile and experience it, or not maybe a 60-mile. And I think having that variety in the routes helps a lot. Pretty much, as far as the routes, it always shocks me. Most registered folks are registering for the 155 or the 100, and then
Wow.
next is the 60-miler. Yeah, that always shocks me because I'm
Wow.
like, I don't want to sign up for that one. I just did the 30 the other day, and I was like exhausted, and so we had 1,600 folks in Hico last year, and I don't know, it was maybe 100 and change doing the 30-miler, and everybody else was doing the 60, and then the majority were doing the 100 and the 155.
Yeah.
But I really, I feel it's important to have that variety of different routes and providing, aid stations, SAG vehicles, and just trying to make it as beginner friendly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's always kind of and I think a lot of that has to do with my first experience. My first experience was not a great one. I was,
Right.
not prepared. And so, I said, having aid stations and having SAG vehicles and mechanics on routes, I think that's one way to really get folks that are interested or curious about gravel to say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance. Let me go do it. It's a big difference from, signing up for a 200-mile ride and not having any support versus signing up for 155 miles and having 5, 6, 8 stations should you need any help.
Right. And if you're one of those people that wants to do it unsupported, you can just pedal on by those 8 stations.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, let's talk about Gravel Locos. Um, the first question I would have, and I think I already know the answer, is it a race or a ride?
It's I struggle with that because I call it an event a lot, but I guess that's up to the person,
Yeah.
because everybody is timed. So everybody gets on number plate. Everybody is going to get their time, whether you're doing the 30 mile or the 155 miler. And it's certainly a pretty chaotic race. I won't say chaotic, but a pretty intense race in the front of the group because we have so many pro cyclists from the U.S. and Europe and Latin America that come. So you will see 50 in the front that are just hammering, and then you'll see other groups behind them that are also riding just as hard. But then you got folks that are, they just want to finish it, and that's usually
Mm,
like me. I
mm.
just want to get it done.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, so I would say that is both. For some folks it's a race. For others it's an event or a ride. Uh, you know, when I did Ted's event in Vermont, and when I did Jess and Sam's event in Montana, I was the last person. So, you know, I would say for me it was a ride. When I did Mid South in 2020, it took me 14 and a half hours,
Mm.
and I certainly wasn't in contention for any kind of placement, but I treated it as an experience and as a ride. So I would say the Gravel Locos is both, and it's really up to the rider what they want to make out of it.
And that's such a cool dynamic because you have the pros who are doing it because they want to, either best their time or beat somebody else. But then you also have at the same start line, like sometimes people call it party pace. They want to just
Yes,
be
yes,
in the event. They want to complete it. You know, who knows what the reason is, but it's nice to be able to have all of those people at the same start line.
yes, together, mixed up in there, and I always say, the pros are doing Gravel Locos, the 155 route in 7 hours or so, and the last folks that come in are usually doing it in 14 hours or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I always say I'm more impressed with those folks doing it, being out there twice as long, it's twice the beating.
Right.
So we are, one of the things that about Gravel Locals are we don't have a cutoff time, so we will stay out there. It doesn't matter how long it takes people to finish. And I always, I make my own trophies, so I usually make at least 5 trophies for the last 5, and we wait, and sometimes it's after midnight, and we wait out there, and we have everything lit up. The timing company is still there, everybody's still
Oh,
there,
I love that.
because I've been that last person many times, and events where there is a cutoff and they they tell you got to turn around, and I've never been one to obey those rules, so I keep going. Because it's like, I don't know. I just, if we're going to talk about the spirit of gravel, I feel like it should be an environment where we're encouraging people to go out and complete these challenges. Because riding those distances is a challenge. It could be a personal challenge. Maybe somebody has been struggling with drug abuse or alcohol abuse or
Mm-hmm.
weight issues, and they've challenged themselves. I'm going to do this 100 miles. I just don't have the heart to say, hey, you missed the cutoff by
Right.
30 minutes or an hour.
Right.
You need to turn around and go back. I mean, to me, that is not something that's going to empower somebody, and it's certainly, I wouldn't want it done to me. So I get it. Some events have that, and that's fine. But if I do one of those events and they try and turn me around, there's gonna be a fist fight because I'm going. you know. But so I made sure that a Gravel Loco, that's one of those things, we don't have a cutoff, and we tell people and we always have SAG vehicles. So last year at both Gravel Locos, Hico, Texas, and Pueblo, Colorado, we have SAG vehicles out there, and they follow the last riders, and they report back to me, and they let me know more or less where they are and how many hours it's going to take, and they're there in case these folks need a little help or something.
Sure.
Uh, but it's just fun. It's fun to see the last 5 come in. And I think in Pueblo, it took the last 12 hours to do it. And in Gravel Locos, it takes a little longer, but it's just a fun atmosphere to, celebrate, the first ones and the last ones and the ones in the middle. And,
Yeah.
again, it just goes back to the spirit of gravel. It's just everybody is part of it. Everybody's want to celebrate whether you were first or you were last or anywhere in between.
I love it. And you mentioned briefly, there's different mileage. And it's basically two events, right? One is in Hico, Texas, like you said, and the other's in Pueblo, Colorado.
Yes, so Hico, Texas is always 2 weeks before Unbound.
Oh, okay.
So May 20th is Hico, Texas. And then Pueblo is September 30th. And the reason for that is we always wanted to be at least a week or two away from the uh, Lifetime Fitness event, the RAD, which takes place neighboring city, usually on October. But this year they decided to do their event the same weekend as ours, so that's going to be
Oh,
interesting.
oh no.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, guys, in their defense, they called me last year in December to tell me that they were changing their date to our same weekend. So I was like, ugh, that's the same day.
Yeah, that's a
We're only
bummer.
like an hour apart. That's not good.
Oh man. Well, hopefully you still have an amazing crowd. And will you describe? I don't know if I've ridden gravel in Texas, but I definitely have in Colorado. And Colorado gravel is nothing like Iowa gravel. So, like, tell the listeners what the quality, like, what is the gravel like there?
I would say that Texas, the Hico, most of Texas, but definitely Hico, Texas, is hard packed. Uh, you can always find a smooth line even when there's loose rocks. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not uh, even if it rains, the chance for mud is slim. And I know that some folks can, oh no, if it rains, there's mud. Yeah, we're talking about an inch, 2 inches of mud. If you really want to see mud, you got to go to mid south when it
Right.
rains. 12 inches,
I
15
was going to
inches of
say,
mud.
yeah, up to your
Yeah.
calves.
So, with the it's so rocky and it's such a hard packed environment in that Hico area that it's very fast. Uh, whenever they freshly grade the road, you'll have some loose rocks, but again, you can either pick the right or the left side, and you'll find a nice smooth line.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly very fast. I've seen people out there doing it in 700 by 30 C tires.
Wow.
I wouldn't recommend it, but I've done it with 700 by 35s, and I've done it with 700 by 50s. But we always tell folks, I think 700 by 38 and bigger is usually a good size tire for rider comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I've seen people with slicks, and I've been running out there for a while now, a few years, and I think I've maybe gone one flat. Uh, so it's not an area that's known for flatting and stuff like that. Now with Pueblo, as you said, it's very different gravel, and it has the potential for becoming mud if it rains.
Mm.
Uh, but it is very smooth. It's much softer, more sandier or like clay type material. When it's dry, it's just smooth as can be. They call it champagne gravel.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you do have that risk that if it does rain for a lot, and that's why we kind of picked September time, end of September, to try and avoid the snow time and try and avoid the heavy rain time of the year. And it works out real nice, but it's very smooth in Pueblo, and uh, the climbing in Pueblo is more gradual, whereas the climbing in Hico is a lot punchier.
Mm.
Um, we have the section of climbs that are three climbs back to back. That the first one kicks up into 21%. The second one I think is 19, and the third one into the 20%. And these are
Wow.
just back to back, and they're a good length. Uh, and I see a lot of people walking. I've seen people just topple over because they don't have enough gearing. Uh, but Pueblo gravel, the climbs are more gradual. They're longer and more gradual versus the steeper, shorter, punchier ones in
Mm-hmm.
Hico.
So completely different events, even though they're
Very
both
different.
Gravel Locos, they're
Yeah.
a-
With Hico, you get a lot of the wildflowers because of the time of year, and with Pueblo, you get the fall colors.
oh
So
yeah,
they're
okay.
very different events.
And obviously, this is an event that people register for, and you've already given some of the cool details about registration with SAG service and aid stops. Like, do you want to give us just an overall view of what registration means?
Well, Mauritius, I would say that the reason I started Gravel Locos was to help fund volunteer fire departments. So
Oh, okay.
folks, when they register, their registration dollars are used for that. So, for example, between 2021 and 2022, in Hico, with the registration money, we bought them a brand new command fire truck, and we built a larger station for them. So we added almost 3,000 square feet to their fire station.
Oh my gosh, that is
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, so you're talking about a 80 something, 85, $90,000 vehicle that we got them, and the expansion of the station was 140,000 or somewhere around there. So that's where the when you registered, you know, that's where the money goes. And if you want to see where your dollars went, just go visit the local volunteer fire station in the city or the town that we're riding from, and that's what we do. And in Pueblo, last year was our first year, and they don't have indoor plumbing, they don't have indoor running water of any kind, no toilet, no sink, nothing. So, and their station was also in need of being made larger. So we
Mm-hmm.
started the fund to build a larger station and also add indoor plumbing. So they can have a toilet, they can have a place to wash their hands. They don't have anything like that. Both of the departments, both in Hico and Pueblo, are really busy departments. They do both fire and accidents. So they're it's fire rescue missions. They deal with auto accidents and all sorts of stuff. So both of them are very busy departments. And what really got me interested in starting Gravel Locos was when I learned of how little funding uh, these volunteer fire departments get. And there's so many of these departments throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them, if they're lucky, they're getting 10, 20% of their budget from the counties or the cities that they serve. The rest is coming from neighbors and residents.
Oh
So
wow.
it's all donations. Uh, so well-funded departments, city and state departments will donate old trucks to them, respirator masks, fire suits. So they get all their stuff used from others,
Mm.
and they rely on their community for money to buy gas or diesel for their vehicles, for money to pay the electric, for money just to get training. So they function with very little, and uh, and that's kind of where I was like, you know what? Why don't we start a gravel event out of here? Since we're out here riding all the time, we just start a gravel event,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll use the proceeds to buy them all the things that they need. And in 2 short years, we've been able to provide for them things that they've been waiting years for. So they needed a command fire truck, and they had been waiting already for years, and they were still like 117th on the list. So it could have been another 10, 15 years before they got a vehicle donated to them, and they were wanting to they were needing to expand the station, for the last 30 something years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the riders, the folks that signed up for Gravel Locos did that. They registered, they paid their fees, and their fees, bought that truck and made that station large. And every time they go to Hico, they can go look at it and say, "Wow, we did that by riding our bikes."
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know, it's just the event is so cool. And to know that you're giving back to the community, like literally.
Yes, it stays there. So
Yeah.
what the registration dollars from Hico stay in Hico, and the ones from Pueblo stay in Pueblo. And these departments and these folks are so appreciative. These men and women that volunteer, they have full-time jobs, and they're still working, 15, 20 hours more at night
Wow.
at these departments because they get called a lot. Both of them are pretty busy areas. And to me, it's just a shock that their funding is the way it is, and it's not unique to just Hico and Pueblo. It's you hear about it everywhere. For example, Ian Boswell is a volunteer firefighter uh, in his town in Vermont, and it's a struggle to get the funds to get the equipment or to pay for the training and the classes and
Mm-hmm.
such. So it's a problem that's nationwide, and it's I'm happy to see that other events have kind of seen the value of helping these volunteer fire departments. And I've gotten a few messages from a couple other events. Hey, we're starting to use our proceeds for the volunteer fire department, and it's just great to hear that,
Oh, for sure.
because for me, it's even if you don't care about volunteer fire departments, but if you ride gravel, you are riding in areas that are in the middle of nowhere, remote, rural areas, and well, guess what type of fire departments are out there? Volunteer
Yeah.
fire departments. And if should you get hurt or have a mechanic or have a problem, you call 911. That's just going to come out and help you.
Right.
So why not say, hey, let's help them?
Wow, this is so cool. I mean, you literally took a dream and, you wanted to help and you already biked, turned into an event, and it's obvious it's been a success, a huge success. So, like, how do you think you were able to attract, well, riders in general, but I mean, you have the pros coming.
I for that I would probably say I have to thank Ted King. Ted King is probably uh, the one person in the beginning of this dream idea that I had that really came forth and helped me.
Mm.
He's very passionate about giving back and such. And I think it was in 2019 when I reached out to him, or 2020. The idea of Gravel Locos came because I had a conversation with the fire chief in Hico, and they were trying to raise $10,000 to buy a used command fire truck because, again, they've been on this wait list forever. And I was like, you know what? I bet I can get 300 people to come out here, and everybody pays something, and we can raise more than that.
Mm.
So my initial thought was 300 people, and the first event had 1,200.
No way.
Yeah, the second event had 1,600. So naturally, I was like, Chief, we're not buying anything used. We're buying a brand new truck. And then I remember asking him after 2021, and they were just like so thankful for this vehicle, and it's such a beautiful vehicle. I was like, whoa, what are we gonna do next? And I said, what other big dream do you guys have? And I remember him saying, oh, this is not gonna happen, but we would love to have a larger station and have a staff lounge and a training area and all this stuff. And I'm like, let's do it.
You're like, done. Consider it
Yeah,
done.
and it happened, because 1,600 people signed up, so it happened. But to go back to it was Ted King. I reached out to him through Instagram, and I never expected for him to to respond. In fact, I reached out to a lot of my favorite riders, men and women, that I would follow, and basically wrote this long message that I sent to them via Instagram, and what I was trying to do, and I wanted to have this gravel event, and I wanted to raise money for the volunteer fire, a detailed message.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the first one or the only one to respond at first, uh, and he just really gave me tons of guidance, and he had experience with events himself, and he's the one that said, you know what, uh, if you want to do it, pick a date. You want to kind of pick a date that's not going to interfere with another big event. Out
Sure.
of respect. It's certainly not an event very close to you. So I wanted to make sure I was nowhere near Mid South. I do have a ranch in Oklahoma, not a few hours from there. So that was a possibility, but I said, let's just do it in Texas. And we made sure that it wasn't when Mid South has their event. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't when Belgian Waffle Ride had their event,
Mm-hmm.
or Unbound. I think, and at the time, I think it was, gosh, it wasn't Unbound. It was Dirty Kansas, the name of the event at the time. And so Ted said, you know what would be ideal is 2 weeks before Unbound, because you've got a lot of riders that are looking for a race, and to do, and 2 weeks in between events is perfect because you have plenty of time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yeah, he suggested doing less than 200 miles, more than 100, less than 200. Uh, so really, strategically, he was kind of like the mastermind behind a lot of this. Uh, and I was just a student listening, taking notes, and because he obviously knew what he was doing, and uh, he reached out to a lot of riders and on my behalf and said, look, this is what he's trying to do. In fact, he even reached out to friends that had something to do with that were in the fire truck sales industry. I mean, he just went all out to
Oh,
help.
so awesome.
So yeah, he bridged a lot of those. He created bridges for me between other riders. And I think his idea of doing it 2 weeks before Unbound was really the big hit because all these Europeans that are wanted to race that are coming to race Unbound, a lot of them get here 2 weeks or a week before Unbound just to acclimate and get used to the area. And that's where once I announced my date, I just started getting interest from European riders about, hey, where do I stay? I'm so and so, and Pete Stetna helped me a lot as well, and also connecting me with other riders. In fact, Pete connected me with Lawrence Tendam. Still waiting for Lance to come. He hasn't come yet. Lance, you're invited.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm sure he listens to this podcast.
yeah,
So.
right. But Lawrence Tandem, was somebody that Pete Stetna connected me with, and then Lawrence brought a whole bunch more Dutch folks, and it's just turned into this international national event, and it's just
Yeah.
been great fun. And they're very passionate. A lot of these men and women are very passionate about giving back, so they help me by talking about the event. It's they've spoken about it at interviews, and Velo News picked it up, and Cycling News, and even GCN and Bicycling Magazine.
Wow.
Uh, so it's been something that has just kind of taken off, and with the help of all these people that I didn't even know who they were. Just they're passionate about doing something fun and also finding a way to fund these volunteer fire departments.
I love it. And now that you've added the second event in Pueblo, that keeps you on your toes because you've now got two events to do.
It is. It's crazy because I always say Gravel Locos is a hobby, and I've got two other businesses that are that I have to run. That it's what pays the bills. But Gravel Locos is not a hobby; it's a business. It's just it's taken over my life. I went from riding 6, 7, 8,000 miles a year to like nothing. And
Right.
since I started Gravel Locos, and it's just kind of taken a toll on my health. I've gained like 60 pounds, and I'm not riding my bike, and I'm like, oh God, I got to figure something out here. So it's yeah, if you're thinking of starting an event, just get ready.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Uh,
like running a business.
for sure. Oh, yeah. If people want to, learn more about it or actually get registered, where do they go?
On our website, so registration is via our website, so it's www.gravellocos.bike, and you'll see both events there. You can click on whichever one you're interested in and find out more. You can see the pros that are coming to race. You can see lots of articles that have been written about the event, and you can see lots of pictures from previous events. Um, if somebody wants to come to the event and they can't afford the event, just send me a message through Instagram or send me an email, and I'll be happy to help.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that everybody gets to participate, and there is uh, a registration fee, but they hope that they understand that where that money is going,
Right.
it's going for a good cause, and it's going to these volunteer fire departments, and they will be able to witness what their registration dollars are doing. They can visit the departments and talk to the firefighters and learn about what we as a gravel community have done for them. The vehicle, the larger station. These are things that are making their lives easier, making those communities safer. So, if you want to be a part of the spirit of gravel, I don't have any problems with events that are for profit only. That's fine. That's their, that is their right. But I would definitely say that I see gravel as a vehicle to give back because it kind of dawned on me at one point is we're going to all these different little towns and we're parking there for free and we're riding their roads and then we get into cars and then we go eat somewhere else. And I start thinking that's just not cool. Uh, so whether you host an event and you donate the funds to that community or not, I think I would urge people that when you go to these little towns, and after you're done riding, if you have to fill up your gas tank, do it there. And if
Yeah.
you want to get something to eat, stay and eat there because it helps them. Hico is they talk about it all the time, and they're so happy to see riders now. This is a little town that really was not very well known, and certainly didn't have the international recognition that it has now, and
Right.
it's made a big difference in their little town. And this is a huge, the population is like 1,200, so having 1,600 riders plus family members there one weekend, it's like, whoa. Become this great gravel cycling area. And I hear it from the little restaurants and the little shops. Man, we get so many riders now. This is so nice. And like Saturday and Sundays were great. We had a whole bunch of cyclists that after they rode, they stopped in and they ate. It really makes a difference in those little
Sure.
towns. So there's so many ways that we can all give back with these small towns, especially since we're, parking there and riding from their, their downtown area.
Yeah. Well, I hope that people listening to this, think about coming to Hico or Pueblo, and for sure go to the website, which is gravellocos.bike, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well,
And
Fabian,
if
thank you.
anybody wants if anybody wants to start their own event and they want some help, I'd be more than happy to give them a little guidance on how to do it.
Yeah.
If I can do it, they can do it.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I don't know, I may see you in Pueblo this
I
fall.
would love that. Love to
Yeah,
see you there. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
you bet.
All right, take care.
A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show. Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit both my Facebook and Instagram pages for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.